Welcome back. We're back with another installment of the Finance Bros, talking about money. You know, the perfect theme song would be Tip and Young Thug, if it ain't about the money. But if I played that, they might shut us down. But anyway, glad to be back. I think it's been a couple weeks actually. So we're going to talk about an extension of actually a topic we talked about probably been a couple months ago now. There was all this kind of an uproar, right? Everybody was talking about UPS and the new contract. And I think that contract extended was going to go through 2026 and was going to land the UPS drivers somewhere around in between $150,000 and $170,000 a year. So we're going to talk about that. And what I think is interesting is anytime something like that happens, well, the money's got to come from somewhere. So definitely excited to talk about it. Without further ado, let me bring up the Intentional Millionaire. What's up, man?
What is going on, Perry and team? How's it going?
Doing good, man. No complaints, man. No complaints at all, man. Glad to talk about this money.
Yeah, it's fun times, good topic. And it's a great topic as we go into tax season.
Oh, yeah.
Tax season started 2 days ago. And if people don't plan, they either going to pay more, they're going to pay now, pay later, but they're going to pay.
Yeah, you know, people waiting on that little money to come in. Have it spent 17 ways already.
A lot of 30-day tags coming.
Yeah,
30-day
right,
tags
man.
1 week, sat on the road the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get Sim up here. We'll introduce him to the show. What's up, man? How's it going?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm thinking about the 30-day tags, man. Yo, have you ever seen how invisible people are with 30-day tags, man? Man, you'll see them on the road and they'll be flying.
Oh, yeah, gone.
Weaving in and out of traffic. And you be saying, man, there's something about those 30-day tags, man, that just makes people feel invisible, man. So I'm interested to talk about this conversation because we talked about this a few months ago where the guys, the UPS guys, they went up. Now they're on the higher echelon as far as desirability, especially the single ones. So, you know, there might be some different sentiments after today's conversation. We'll see if the people still feel like they're still on top or not, you know. So I'm interested to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a real good conversation. And something I do want to make sure to just touch on, everybody's channel, my channel, of course, Perry Unlikely. I talk about mainly crypto, but I just like money in general, talking about finances, kind of in and out. I like every bit of finance. So Intentional Millionaire, tell them about your channel.
Yeah, so on my channel, The Intentional Millionaire, we talk about everything as it relates to personal finance, as it relates to how to make money, how to increase your skills, and how to have a strategy so you could build out your net worth.
Nice. Sim, how about your channel?
Yeah, so you can find my channel, SimSeer, just like the name right there. And I also approach personal finance from the FIRE approach. That's financial independence, retire early. It's all about strategizing, putting yourself in position to win as early as possible in the game before we're 65 and we're walking on crutches and walkers and everything like that. So the goal is to put yourself in position now while you still have that spunk and that youthfulness, and you can put yourself in position to make things happen for yourself. So that's what we do on that channel. If you're interested, consider subscribing.
Nice. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. So as I mentioned, right, guys, we've got UPS, and it was not long ago that 150,000 to 170,000, which is big money. And you think about how many drivers there is, that's a lot of money. I mean, let's face it. Certainly when you compare that type of money, regardless of whether it's just, and that's total compensation, right? And the actual wages, I think, were $44 an hour, I want to say. So and that's around, I want to say 92,000 a year. So just taking that at face value at 92,000 a year, and you look at that versus what the average is. Now, you know, the internet, we always talk about this. The internet says everybody makes six figures. Everybody does. Leave it to them. But that's a good number in general. I mean, to make that type of money is good money in general. Certainly, now they work hard. It's a deserving. You don't have to have a degree, right? You put in that sweat equity and you work your way up to it. I think still they work their way through. Basically, you start out moving packages. You don't start out driving, right? So they work their way up, and but that's a good wage in general, compared to what the average is. But then you take all this stuff and put on top of it. But what I do want to do, because some people didn't see the other portion months back when they had this labor negotiation and everything. So, because I think it was possibly going to go to strike, right? They didn't get to that point. And just so people know, Amazon, well, that's UPS. So you can imagine the amount of packages we're talking about already just with Amazon. And there's so many other contracts there as well. And one thing real quick, I'll show you all a video where a driver gives his perspective on those wages to clarify things. One thing that we did touch on last time, I think, was we saw Amazon kind of trying some different stuff. Come be a driver, come have your own fleet, and just different ways where it looked like Amazon was trying to come up with their own way of kind of skirting around this. But ultimately, I think they realized it just wasn't going to work. And not to mention that whole thing about owning your own fleet. You could just go work for someone else. If you're going to have that many cars, that many delivery vehicles to make that amount of money you were going to make, you could just go work for somebody else and not have all the liability with it. That's the thing. So anyway, but what do you guys, so we're talking about 12,000 jobs being cut. So before even getting into it, what are you guys' initial thoughts? Not seeing anything, just off the bat, after seeing that news prior, right, about the 150,000, 170,000 a year, what's your initial take? Just think about the headline. UPS cuts 12,000 jobs. Surprise, shocker. What's your initial thought? Let me know what you think, Intentional Millionaire.
To me, it's not surprising, because I think we're in the era where, starting last quarter last year, where jobs were starting to cut. And I think that what we have to remember, at least for me, when I first saw it, I just automatically thought this is a result of COVID, because normally how everything works is maybe 2 or 3 years before everything really catch up or either lag. In this case, it's 3 years of lag before we really start to see the effects of COVID, because the economy had a small window of a irregular type of economy, because so much money was pumped in to try to keep things going, but it was almost superficial. So that's my take on it. I'm not necessarily surprised. And I think more job cuts is coming.
Right. Okay. Good points. Good points. All right, Sim, tell me what's your initial thoughts when you when you heard this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. If we really think about it, the money has to come from somewhere. And so from year to year, how much is really going to change as far as the volume to really justify them being able to pay people that extra money? So the money literally has to come from somewhere. And you think about it, if the company has an opportunity to really choose which position that they're going to actually make their cuts from, do they want to make the cuts from their legs, the part that really allows them to really have ground, or do they want to be able to kind of slim their body or have like a narrower top in order for them to actually go about achieving that same exact outcome with like a slimmer profile? I believe that, they probably saw that, okay, the boots on the ground, we really need those because they're a distribution network. The people who are doing the management, maybe we can just put a bigger load on the people who are presently here and just figure out a way to, what they say, do more with less, So that's my opinion. I'm not surprised at all.
Absolutely. And what I've learned over time, these things are cyclical. It's expand and contract. It just happens in the business in general, but it's really about, who you cut. That's the thing what you were just alluding to. So no, I think those are great points. My take when I first saw it, not really surprised. We didn't go much into it at the time, but I do know when you add that much, you're talking about that much compensation. And also realize the shipping industry is very, very tight in terms of competitive. So you're always getting squeezed, right? So Amazon's got so much power. While UPS does have power, Amazon does too. So Amazon's trying to still deliver as cheap as possible. So you're trying to find a way to squeeze that in there and please the drivers, please the workforce, but at the same time, not get squeezed, right? And before you get squeezed, you're going to squeeze somebody else, even if that's your own employees. That's essentially, or a portion of it, right? Not the drivers. So, so I really was not that surprised about it. I knew that it had to come from somewhere at some point in time. So we are going to check out a video real quick. And this is where the driver explains, he gives a good explanation of how that 150 to 170,000 is actually made up, so people understand that aspect. So I think this will be a great, really great video.
Well, now that UPS drivers are making $170,000 a year, are you thinking of switching careers?
How's that possible $170,000 a year feeling? This is going to take longer than a minute to explain, so let's go about this the right way. Now, $170,000 a year is a bit of an exaggeration here, but let me break it down for you. Now, I don't know about you, but I love factual information, so I'm going to do my best to just be transparent about the wages that we make. Under current contract, our wage is $41.51 an hour. Now, this contract that has been seen all over social media, once that contract ratifies, which is in the voting process right now, we'll be making $44.26 an hour. Now, if you do some quick math here, if you were to take $44.26 an hour times 2,080 hours, which is 40 hours a week, that comes out to about $92,000 a year. But that's not including overtime, and it's also not the important part that we're missing here. See, one of the other things that a lot of people don't take in consideration is our medical insurance and our pension. Now, our pension, don't quote me, but it's roughly somewhere between $11 and $13 per hour that's paid into our pension at the 2,080 hours, which comes out roughly about $25,000 a year. Now, you can figure the medical insurance at whatever you want, but you can quickly see that it would actually take about a $170,000 a year job to replace this one for me. Now, while the media is making it a little more profound than it really is, they're really not that far off of how amazing it is to work for this company.
So there you have it. I think that was a good, hold on one second. I think that was a good explanation of just in general. And I think really in the end, what he said was really the most telling, if you ask me, when he said, you can quickly see how hard it is to replace this job. I mean, so it's all those components that you have to, like I said, the pay is good in itself, but when you start looking at $13 an hour, I mean, going into your pension, man, it starts to add up. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It really starts to add up a lot. So I thought he made some very good points. That's coming straight from a driver of what the makeup of that was. What do you guys think, Intentional Millionaire? What do you think about just that? Because we didn't cover that last time. We talked about it, but we didn't cover it from the driver's perspective. This may come out later or whatever, but what's your thoughts on the just in general, what he's saying about the job? And I'll just say real quickly, my take was, man, to be young, well, any age, but to go into that job, not having schooling, you start out young, get into that, man, you set yourself up long term. You're gonna work for it, but man, what a great opportunity. But what's your thoughts on that, Intentional?
I think it's great. I think it's one of those type jobs where you get compensated for the work you put in. And you get some of it right in the now, but you get the biggest bulk of it in the future. Because if you look at that's $25,000 a year going into, the pension, You do that for 10 years, that's 250,000. Another 10, you know, you automatically got $500,000 to base your pension off of.
Yep.
So I just think from that alone, that's game changing because most people would never see that type of money in their lifetime. They might work and earn it, but I'm talking about see it where you actually get a chance to utilize it in some shape, form, or fashion.
Yep. Absolutely, man. I think that's it's great points made. Sim, how about you? What's your thoughts? You know, about just his explanation of the money, what you can make, and kind of get an idea what the deal actually entails.
I mean, I think it's good, man. I mean, to think about it, way back in the day, UPS was like one of the best places to work, especially if you didn't come from a college background. And to think here we are in 2023, 2024, it's still a similar conversation. It seems like this contract that's been just negotiated seems to be an answer to what the drivers have been asking for. Now, I know I have friends who work for UPS, and they work hard, especially from November all the way up until December, sometimes a little bit of January. So it's not like they don't deserve it, but it seems like it's really like a viable option for them, and it presents them with great opportunities for them to live an above standard lifestyle for them and their family. I think that it's a great thing, and it's even better when you have a driver who's speaking to it, who's not just saying, "Hey, this was a lie. This was something that they put out there just for marketing purposes or for the purpose of just PR." It's really legitimately a great opportunity, and it would take a job that pays me 170 to actually equate to what I'm experiencing here. So this is a great opportunity. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's get into real quick just the explanation of these cuts, and so people understand what this is about as far as with the 12,000 jobs being cut. So I'm going to share another video really quick. Let's pull this up. Let's see. Here we go. And we will play this. All right.
Yeah, I mean, they're really just reeling from the impact from the labor negotiations they had last year. So running up ahead of those negotiations, a lot of shippers were like, you know something, I'm not going to use UPS because I might want to use one of their competitors like FedEx or even the Postal Service because I don't know if my stuff is going to be able to get where it needs to go on time. So a lot of that diverted freight, you know, is kind of deleveraging effect on the network, which really weighs on margins. And then, you know, they had the negotiations, they have a contract in place, which is fantastic for UPS and also for the Teamsters, you know, but a lot of the initial costs of that new contract are in year one. And so that's like a real big hit to margins. That coupled with the fact it's taking some time for them to win back some of that share. You know, on today's earnings call, management noted that they've won back about 60% of that share. So it's going to take time for them to get that share back to where it needs to be. And again, these are networks. And when you're talking about freight transportation, it's all about building density because the more stuff you can deliver at the same time, you know, the better the margins are. And that's what they're really working through right now. And you know, what I thought was kind of one of the more interesting little tidbits in the call this morning is that they think that this year that the small package volume from an industry standpoint is only going to increase like 1%, which to me I thought was a little pessimistic. But you know, all in all, they're really dealing with tepid demand. They're dealing with rising costs, and you know, they're obviously taking those costs pretty seriously. As you know, you mentioned earlier, they're laying off or planning to lay off or reduce heads, however nicely you want to say it, 12,000 people. And then also they're looking to get they're putting their brokerage business, which is called Coyote, under a strategic review. Coyote is the third largest freight broker out there. So one of the largest publicly traded ones are C.H. Robinson. People might not know that, may know.
And I want to make a point real quick. And actually, I'm in transportation, so all this is pretty normal in terms of, you know, what I work with and what I've experienced. There's a couple questions that another guy's going to ask that are pretty good questions that we'll recap real quick as we continue on the discussion. So I just want to stop and say that real quick.
Also, RXO is another pure play brokerage, is Landstar. There's a couple private ones. A lot of large companies like JB Hunt have their own brokerage business in house.
I'm sorry for a series of stupid questions, but this is who you're talking to. What is a freight? What's their role and what do they do at freight brokerage?
So they're pretty much get together buyers and sellers of freight. So if you think about it, so if you're a shipper and you have a load that you need to get from point A to point B, you might use a broker to find a truck to carry that load. And the broker kind of makes a spread in between what they're charging the shipper and what they're paying the trucking company. What's happened is, it's a very cyclical business. There's great highs and kind of depressing lows, and margins can be very volatile during the cycle.
So this just a back and forth. This brokerage that they own, that they're now getting rid of, that you could have gone to them and they could have picked a shipper other than the company that owns them, UPS.
Yeah. So, and he's going to explain it. So just so everybody knows, when you talk about the freight brokerage business, so you have motor carriers, right? And there's a bunch of different ways you can make money. You can own or operate. You own your own. You can obviously be a driver for a different company, i.e. UPS drivers working for them. And then there's also freight brokerages, where with the brokerage, a brokerage has a network. So when you need something moved, you can call them, and then they've got a network of different drivers who own their own, the drivers own their own trucks, and they can run those loads. So, the market has went down a lot. There was one point the rates were just absolutely crazy, but they went down a lot. So as that happens, people are still trying to make money. So when that happens, people will do loads for less. So the market falls off, fuel is down. People are willing to go more miles. So it makes it a challenge. But what I think is most interesting about this is, and this is something I wasn't aware of. I mean, Coyote, I've heard of Coyote a million times. I didn't know they own that. So not only is UPS, see, everybody's thinking of UPS in terms of just simply delivering these packages. They're not thinking about the fact they also have their hands in the brokerage market, where they're also, getting in touch with like you could literally get Coyote to, if you need something moved across the country, Coyote will reach out, have someone move that load across the country for you, and then they make a portion of that. They make the in between on that. So let's just say it was $1,000 load. Let's say that the brokerage, the driver's going to do the load for 900. Well, boom, the brokerage is the middleman, and they make $100. And the spread it's different spreads on different loads, but essentially that's what he's saying. So that is something else I guess they're trying to sell off. So we'll finish this up real quick, and then we'll continue our discussion.
Yeah, so UPS could potentially use its own in-house brokerage to move a trailer load of freight between two of their sorting facilities. Or if you're Walmart and you have an extra load that you need to get from your DC to your Spring Lake Walmart. I don't think there's a Walmart in Spring Lake. You might use them because either the carriers that you're contracted with don't have the capacity, or you're trying to take advantage of cheap rates in the spot market. And right now, truckload rates are extremely cheap. They've been bouncing along the bottom for quite some time, and so shippers might like to leverage that. Intermodal is an example. So the intermodal space, which is railroads, that's when you see like 2 containers on top of a railroad. They're facing increased competition because of the loose conditions that are in the spot market, and a lot of those shippers might use brokerage to try to find try to find a carrier to carry their loads.
I think in there, it sounded like you just said there was a freight recession, or at least implied it.
Calling that for a long time.
Okay.
Well, there has been for about 2 years.
I mean,
now.
how severe is it right now?
The way we look at it, we're probably a little optimistic about 2024, kind of a glass half full, and it's filled with a really good Cabernet. So I'd say we're probably more optimistic than most. We've been saying that we didn't feel that the economy necessarily had to go into a regular recession. Thing was just gummed up during the pandemic, and so capacity was in high demand. And the problem with getting capacity was that there weren't enough workers to either be in the trucks or be on the railroads or be in the air freight area. So there was a real issue there, and so we just saw like a backup in demand, and then all of a sudden that demand got fulfilled. The supply chain started loosening up. Here we are today. You have moderating economic demand. You have an ISM in negative territory. So the manufacturing economy is not great. You have some difficult comparisons. So when we look at railroads, for example, not to be all over the place, but when you look at railroads last year.
So he's essentially talking about really all the challenges, right? So this is a lot of this is nerdy, right? But it's really the behind the scenes things that people aren't really thinking about, that really does cause problems. So, at the same time, and I think I told you guys before we got on the stream, during the pandemic, I want to say that UPS, I think they bought in what I want to say was $100 billion. That now is down to $90 million. roughly, right? So you got that going down. And then you have their freight brokerage piece, right? That's becoming more and more of a challenge as well. So you have all these things happening at one time. And also you've signed this contract, right, with the union to go up on the wages. So really, it's just one of those things where it's everything has come at one time, and something has to give. And what has to give? What has to give is a 14% cut to management, essentially. Some levels of management and contractors. So that's what this is about. So to be clear, the drivers aren't the ones taking the cut. Remember, they're the ones that just signed on with this new contract. But it is the managers and contractors. And to that point, when you guys see managers, the managers and contractors that being cut, what do you think? And I'll start with you, Sim. What do you think that, like, think about how big, right, that this is. I mean, we are talking about UPS. So tons of employees. So when you think about that, when you think about management, right, the people who are managing it being cut 14% at that rate, do you see any issues with that, or do you see some challenges with that, right? Or do you think it just boom, we're saving $1 billion? By the way, that's the number. They're doing this to save $1 billion. Do you think they just save the $1 billion and move on? You think it causes issues? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky, man, because I do have friends who are also in the management as well. You know, there's been times that I've been on a conversation with some of my friends that are UPS management, and they've had to get off the phone because the driver's calling them and they're trying to help them out with a situation. So I can see it causing some issues, especially with like driver breakdowns and people who are working like in the rural areas. If they have issues out there, it's going to require a little bit more legwork. But I would assume that it's a high likelihood that as part of the agreement to embark upon this new contract, there was an understanding that's like, hey guys, the deliverables that we need to have in place need to be higher going into the future. And we need to make less mistakes in order for us to be able to sustain this specific position with UPS. And so I'd say that the expectations probably been increased significantly with the drivers, and that the management, of course, is kind of like collateral damage. It's just part of the process. And they're having to figure out a way to really manage more from afar as opposed to having to be really, really close. I would think that like the union reps are probably having more conversations that are more along the lines of, hey guys, listen, we're going to have to figure out a way to be more autonomous with the way that they were working. Now we understand that the management is going to be reduced significantly, but there's an expectation for us to make so many deliverables throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, in order for us to be able to sustain this position right here. Otherwise, then we'll be kind of going backwards on the things that we promised them when we were at the table.
All right. Good deal. So what's your thoughts, Intentional? By the way, they have 495,000 employees. So that's obviously that's a lot of employees. What's your thoughts on it as far as do you think these cuts, do you think it causes any issues to the overall business? Whether it's customer satisfaction, whatever, or do you think this is something that they just do and move on? What's your take on that?
I think it's two sides to it. I think it could be, from one side, I think it could be just the attrition of their system. So they're changing their system to something that's more doable, but is more output focused. And that could be directly because they may have overhired or been too aggressive coming out of COVID. And now I like to say they may be trimming the fat. So that's one perspective. But then the other perspective, it could be they're looking at their savings to possibly utilize more technology to backfill these positions that they really didn't see that that they consider could be filled through some type of AI, some type of robotics. I just think that that's where the era we're in. But more or less, I think it's really just part of business. I just think it's to them, it's kind of like, okay, we got rid of them, we trimmed some fat. But I also think it's to set a new pace for the culture within the organization.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening, morale can affect an organization in two ways. Either it could get it down where people feel like we don't know if we're going to be next, or it could cause people now to understand that you are expendable. So you come here to work, not come here to play around, goof off, or just make free money. So
yeah, I think those are great points. Something I kind of feel, now something I've seen over the years, basically, man, I think it's no different than what regular people do. What happened during the pandemic when everybody had that extra money? Balling, spending, everybody had stocks. You know what I'm saying? Darnell at the grocery store is talking about buying Tesla. He never even heard of Elon Musk. You know what I mean? It's like everybody can tell you everything about every stock. Everybody knew something about crypto, right? People, look at the housing crisis, right? Back in the day, people had houses. Go ahead, intentional.
The PPL experts.
Oh, yeah. Yes. You know what I'm saying? It's like everybody knows everything, right? And everybody's spending. Have y'all noticed it does seem, and maybe it's just me, it could be the algorithm. I know it goes on, but the flashiness has gotten a little quiet. It just doesn't, I don't see it like I was seeing it during the pandemic. It was just in abundance, right? I just don't, and it could be my algorithm, but there's still going to be fakers out there, but I'm not seeing it quite as much. And it's because the market's changed, and that's what it is. And so I think that this is nothing more than an expand and contract. And I ultimately, they will hire those workers back. I mean, all it takes is I think it's an attempt, and I think that's what you do in business. But what I can tell you is this. I haven't even looked, and if I go back through history, this same type of cut at a different percent has happened. I guarantee it. I haven't even looked it up, and I guarantee it's happened. And they were quick to say, hey, while this is a 14% cut to managers and supervisors and contractors, this is only a 3% cut to our total, job force, right? So that's what I think it comes down to. And I do believe one thing that it does cause an effect on is you got to remember, it's not that simple. That's the thing about it. And I've been through it. It's not always that simple. No one's just saying, like, I don't know anyone who goes to their boss and says, hey, I've literally had hundreds of employees before. I've never had a time where I said, hey, I need to hire this person. Okay, cool. Man, you got to do backflips, prove it out on paper, jump through hoops. So when we're talking 14%, there's a way that number got there, and there's a reason. It's because it was needed. Now, last time I checked, it's not really, now the business, this doesn't look like the business it's down some, but that doesn't seem like it matches the 14%. Sim said it, and I think it was before we got on. This is about one thing. This is about the one person, Sim said it. I'm quoting him. This is about the one person you can't fire, and that's the shareholder. And I think that was put great. That's who this is about, because I saw something that said UPS reports nearly $2.5 billion in profit for the fourth quarter, according to USA Today. It says, however, the fourth quarter 2023 consolidated revenues of $24.9 billion were a seven. So mind you, that's revenue of $24.9 billion, profit $2.5 billion. But that was that 24.9 billion was a 7.8% decrease from fourth quarter revenue in 2022. This is about expectations. Conversation I've had many a times with people I've worked with in the past. Let's say that just in terms of, I mean, whether you want to say the budget, you know, the P&L, if we go and say, hey, let's just say we're going to do it identical. $10,000 is what you make. You're going to, at the end of the year, you got two different, we'll take 2 different years. 2024, end of the year, you're going to make 100,000. 2025, end of the year, you're going to make 100,000. Both years, you made 100,000. And we're talking profit, all in. Now, 2024, I told you I was going to make 80. I still made 100,000. I told you I'd make 80 at the end of 2023 for the next year. 2025, I told you I'd make 120. I made 100 both years. 1 year could get you fired. That is the difference. You made the same both years. It's the expectations. It's no different than anything else in this world, right? We call someone a bust. We call some of the greatest players in the world. A sport where only 400 people can play will call you a bust simply because of expectations. And you've been the best in the world since you were practically born. So I want to explain that because that's the way it works. So this whole thing really is about expectations. And once they go through a good period where everything seems to be good, we can kind of wipe our forehead and then say, okay, the drivers are not very happy because we've been kind of missing because we don't have enough employees to manage them. And now it's working its way up to the top. And I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. So now we can get people back in here to kind of get back out there and help this. So that's and that's not always the case, but that's the way I kind of see it. Is just it's as simple as that. They'll expand again when the time is right, when the expectations allow them, and we're in a place of abundance again. That's what'll happen. You guys got any thoughts on that? And I hope I explained that in terms of, you know, kind of the way that it tends to go. But you guys have any thoughts on that?
I can see that, but I think that most companies, if let's just say in this scenario, they got rid of 12,000. If they can still maintain and make the numbers grow by, let's just say 5 or 10%, even if they go back and do another expansion, they're not going to expand back to the same amount of people, because they are going to run a model to see if they can get the same amount of output or more with less people. Why would they do that? So normally that expansion is going to come back around to another new product line or some type of new process, but it's going to be very limited. At least that's what I see possibly happen. Because I really think they're going to leverage some form of technology.
Right.
Me personally.
Yep. No, I think you make a good point. And my experience, right, it's still anecdotal. Where I'm talking about what I've seen at different places. While I don't think it may be the same number, I still think you tend to get loose. Like, and put it this, I just looked this up, right? I just typed in a random year. I typed in UPS layoffs 2010. And the first thing that popped up was shipping giant UPS cutting 1,800 jobs in the U.S. Now I just picked a random, but back then it says UPS based in Atlanta has 408,000 workers. So now they're up nearly 90,000 employees since that time. So it would make sense. But if you think about it, even then at 400,000, and see, then they said this will, and I don't know what they're cutting. I don't know if it's drivers or not. I haven't read the article, but it says this will be nearly 1%. So the fact they're saying 1%, we know it's not, it's a segment just like this. So it's something you see over and over again, but I do agree. The difference between 2010 and now would be some form of technology. And I would expect those cuts to get bigger and bigger in the future, and then really not be adding on. But the thing about that is it going to be? It may be management and drivers. I mean, we don't know, right? We don't know, because like, if I'm hearing all this stuff about drones delivering, and there are drones out there delivering, so we'll see. And see, once again, there's Amazon. It's always Amazon's continually coming up with ways they'll deliver. It's because, well, you know, look at the price of this, and of course, we as the end user, you guys have Amazon Prime. Yeah, I don't know anybody who doesn't. I'm sure somebody doesn't have it, but you know, they went up on their prices. Why? Some of it, UPS had to pass some of this on, and this is probably the piece that didn't get passed on, a portion of it anyway. How about you, Sim?
Yeah, so you know, one thing that I learned during the pandemic, man, when I sat back and started looking, I said, man, all these cuts that are happening, who is not being impacted by the layoffs? And you start to look and you see it's the shareholders. They are unfireable. Everything that the company does is in order to satisfy the shareholders. And I had to tell myself, you know, how can I put myself in position to be a shareholder so I can have a little bit of immunity? And it was only through really understanding that you have to figure out a way to put yourself in position. It's almost, when we think about our boy Steve Jobs, right? How he ended up being ousted out of his own company that he created as a result of the board and the shareholders. It's like a double-edged sword, you know. It's like you want growth, you want the opportunity to expand, you want the opportunity for you to be a global phenom, but damn, do you want what comes with that? You know, do you want someone else to actually push you out of your own company because they don't feel like they appreciate the direction that you're taking the company in? It's hard to deny. It's a textbook lesson that you have to understand positionality. And even if we look at our boy Elon Musk this week, there are people who are celebrating that he was not able to get paid the $55 billion. But guess who are the ones who are really celebrating the fact he didn't get that big payout? It's the shareholders, not so much the employees, definitely not him, because he had to go all the way to court in order for him to fight for him to get that money. It's the shareholders. So now it's like the people who you were in allegiance with are now eating away at you, you know? So we have to understand that it's a difficult situation that you can find yourself in when you start to decide to go public, because now people outside of you make the decisions that could either benefit you or really hurt you. So yeah, it's interesting. I want to say one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we really think about it, UPS drivers are literally data acquisition machines. If we go back to that video that you shared initially with the driver, the very first thing that he does prior to him explaining the compensation is he goes on his pad and he indicates that he's taking a break, right? Because what that does right there is it sends a signal to his office that says, hey, do not consider every single minute, or do not consider me as moving. I'm stationary at this very moment. Do not calculate me as me moving from this delivery to the next delivery. I'm actually stationary right now. And then once I come off break, he comes back and he clicks on it to say, okay, I'm back online. So now if we kind of go back as someone who also was in the delivery business, it's all about tracking your package to package time, because then at that point you can start to write it out. Okay, when we have this sort of weather, this is what we can expect. When we have that weather, this is what we can expect. On a good day, this is what we have. On a bad day, this is what we have. So then you develop an idea of what seems to be a normal delivery time. You take that, you couple that with all the drivers around the country. Now they have the delivery mechanism throughout the whole country to say, okay, it takes this package to go from California to go to New York this amount of time. And these are the various different conditions that come along the way. Just like Tesla, just like many of the other products, they're data acquisition vehicles for the purpose of being able to sell a digital product like Tim and Perry have told you about, that works to benefit the company because it's using data analytics in order for it to actually create a new product that they can go ahead and use first themselves to make sure that they have the proof of concept, but then secondly, put it out there into industry in order for them to benefit and bring some sort of resources back into the house.
Great point. Great point. I want to show you guys something real quick. This is just to share with people. Just because this is just for future reference. And I'm not saying it always works perfect, but I think this will will kind of give some insight. All right, so simple headline. This was December the 6th, 2023. FedEx UPS delivery truck maker lays off over 900 at 3 plants. This article would have told you something was up, because the very people who make the trucks, right, who make these trucks are laying off. Well, that means something's going on. So I'm just pointing this out to, usually there are signs that things are happening, right? There's signs, there's always signs that things are happening, but we're just paying too much attention to it. And this goes for if you're looking to buy stocks, if you're looking, even as an employee, right? Even as an employee, it's important, it's important to know that, hey, the biggest, it doesn't matter where you're working. If the very thing that you manufacture, you're noticing, they're not making them anymore. Well, then something's going to happen to the jobs. There's always a trail of events, right? And while this is the truck maker, it may very well be something else that led to, this, right? So you got to always look at the tea leaves, man. And it'll kind of show you a trail of what's going on. So, but yeah, I think this is interesting. Overall, I think this is an interesting topic. And once again, something I'm not surprised about. I knew that money had to come from somewhere at some point. And obviously I know, and also because I'm in tune with it, I knew the shipping industry is in not all segments, but some of it's in a certain place. And it's just, it's been tough. So, but yeah, I think this is a good conversation though. I think it was a good conversation just to kind of go through and to just show people you got to look at the moves. You got to look at the moves and what's going on. You guys have anything else? Any more thoughts on it or anything like that in terms of the cuts? I ultimately just think this is how the economy goes. It's expands and contracts. That's just the way it works.
Man, I think that, if we're really thinking about it, like Tim said, like this is probably the slower part of the season, right? So they could afford to trim the fat around this time of the year. Now, if they were making these same exact cuts, Perry, what time of the year was that 2010 layoff announced?
Oh, that's a good point. Let's see. The 2010 layoff was, let me see. You got the article right here. We know it wouldn't have been in fourth quarter.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I haven't even looked and I can bet it wasn't. Oh, well, I'll be darned. January the 8th. It's always it's like, hey, we got that bump because we're going to be fine in the fourth quarter. And then boom, let's go ahead and ease back in. So yeah.
I don't know now. Now that I'm thinking about it, man, think about how they hire on the temporary labor for the fourth quarter. The people who didn't go through the trenches of having to work the back of the truck, load the truck. The people literally who are assistants on the truck to the drivers. So they're just temp workers that literally just ride shotgun and they help them out with his mechanics, right?
Right.
But
yep.
They're not actually people who've been working the process of loading the truck up and being in the warehouse, sorting and everything like that. They're literally just temporary workers. So in that regard, I don't know, man. It's a little bit fishy because if we're not considering, if they don't tell us how many people they took on in November as temp workers, then how much of the 12,000 is actually temp workers compared to management, because we have to make sure that we consider if they're not really speaking to people who are long-term employees. These might be well, in fact, I know people who were delivering to my house who were delivering in their own pickup trucks, their own vehicles. And then I also saw this fourth quarter that my UPS driver had somebody on the passenger side when I stopped him one of the days, you know. So those are the things that I think about.
Check this out. February 2023, UPS lays off undetermined number of junior drivers. That was them prepping, like, okay, we know how this negotiation is going to go. We're going to pay this money out, but ain't going to be nobody on the truck with you, though. You're going to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, these articles do tell a story of what's going on. And all of them, obviously, in the beginning of the year, none of them at the end of the year in that prime time, right? That literally prime time. So very interesting. But yeah, I think it's man, this is business, right? This is business, man. Ups and downs. So we should be able to schedule a live in January, mid to late January of 2025, the way that it looks like it's been going, right? So but no, man, I just thought this would be a pretty good topic to touch on this, because last time we did touch on the we did get a chance to touch on it, on when all this money was going to be made. But it's always a cause and effect. You guys got anything else to add specifically about UPS, or just specifically financially related at all?
Yeah, I got to I think the big takeaway is for the people that did get fired or did get laid off, whether it be UPS or any job, I think that's why it goes back to the fundamentals of finances, making sure that you have your emergency fund in place. Because for anybody to lose your job, it could be devastating, especially when you don't know when the next paycheck is going to come from. So I think a big takeaway is make sure you have a plan and a strategy. So just in case, if it does happen to you, you got a way to be able to maneuver until you get another job. I think that's a big takeaway. But also, I think the other takeaway is make sure you take advantage. If you're going to work a job and you're at the job, make sure you take advantage of all the benefits. Maximize on your opportunity, because the reality is sometimes we be so focused on just our actual pay or our salary, we forget about taking advantage of the benefits that's also inclusive to the salary. So I think something we really just got to think about.
Man, good thoughts. Good thoughts. Sim, give me your thoughts, man. Give me some.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback what Tim was saying, there's power in being prepared, having an emergency fund to give you that launch pad, whether it be 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year. Who knows in this economy what exactly is going to happen? I can promise you one thing, is that every single corporation is required by their given state to notify the state 60 days in advance. So there's an act called the WARN Act, WARN as in Nancy Act. Look it up for your given state. And there's a list of all the corporations, the companies who will be laying people off. They're required to announce it no less than 60 days in advance. That gives you 60 days of preparation, 60 days of time for you to put yourself in position for another situation. If you look up there, make it a habit. I can say you can try it weekly, you can try it daily. Look up there and look for your given state and see if your job could be potentially listed, or your corporation would be listed up there as one of the companies that will be making layoffs for the given reasons, whatever they can come up with. We can't trust what these corporations are going to do. All we know, like Tim said, there's power in preparing for the future through retirement, through your HSA, putting yourself in position in order for you to really make sound decisions going into the future. You spending that money that you have on your salary and foregoing you paying money into your retirement, you know, it could definitely be a situation where you could find yourself in a really desperate situation. A lot of times they say you're 2 paychecks away from homelessness. So if you can put yourself in position to avoid being one of the ones that ends up being unhoused or displaced, I would strongly suggest that that emergency fund is a good starting place.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. So I will wrap it up. Definitely thanks to both Sim and Intentional. Once again, just talking finance bros. We always enjoy it. We will be back next week and talk further on finance. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you.